Welcome back. And if this is your first time here, welcome in. I'm glad you found us. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in the presence of someone you know well, someone you see every week, someone you've spoken to dozens of times, and felt just for a second that something was not quite right? Not a thought exactly, more like a reaction, a stillness that passed through you before you even had a word for it. Most of us ignore that. We're polite, we're tired, we have places to be. Tonight's stories are about what happens when you ignore it a little too long. 7 accounts, different countries, different circumstances, but most of them share one thread, something that passed for familiar just long enough. If you're new here, the subscribe button is below. Those of you who come back every week already know the ritual. Turn the lights down, put your headphones in, and let's begin. The neighbor's shape. I need to start with something practical, because I think it matters. I am a nurse. I have been for 19 years. I work nights mostly, and I have learned to pay attention to things other people let slide. Small changes, small wrongness. The difference between a patient who is sleeping and a patient who is about to stop sleeping in a way that can't be undone. I mention this because people sometimes assume that what I'm about to tell you was a product of fatigue or stress, or the way night shift workers sometimes lose track of time and ordinary things. I want you to understand that I was paying attention. I was always paying attention. That's what makes this hard to sit with. My daughter Hannah was 8 years old when this happened. We lived on the 3rd floor of a residential building in a suburb south of Yokohama. We had lived there for 8 years. I knew the building well. I knew most of my neighbors by face, some by name. The woman in the apartment directly to my left was called Yuki. She was maybe 12 years older than me, quiet, neat. She worked for a medical supply distributor and traveled occasionally for her job. We had a good relationship, not close, but warm. We nodded in the corridor. We exchanged small things sometimes. A bag of persimmons in autumn, a leftover dish when I'd cooked too much. She had given Hannah a small potted cactus for her birthday 2 years before this. Hannah still has it. In late October, the building manager mentioned to me while I was checking my mail that Yuki had gone to Osaka for about 10 days to visit her sister. A family matter. I filed this away without thinking much about it. I had a week of night shifts ahead of me, and I was more concerned with my sleep schedule. 3 days after that, at around 4 p.m., someone knocked on my door. I was awake. I had slept until 1 and was making tea before my shift. I opened the door. It was Yuki. She was holding a small container of miso, the kind you buy pre-sealed, with the lid that snaps down. She said she'd found it in the back of her cupboard and didn't want it to go to waste before her trip. She said she'd heard I liked miso soup. She smiled and held it out. I thanked her and took it. We talked for perhaps 2 or 3 minutes. She asked how Hannah was doing. I told her. She said she'd be back in about a week, wished me well at work, and left. That was all. I made miso soup that evening. It was good. I did not think about it again. The second visit was 4 days later, a Tuesday. She knocked in the afternoon again, around the same time. She said she had found something else she wanted to pass along, a small packet of dried kombu she wouldn't use before she got back. She handed it to me. We spoke for maybe 5 minutes. She asked Hannah about school, by name, and asked specifically how the art project was going. Hannah had been working on a paper collage for her class. I don't remember mentioning this to Yuki before. I assumed I must have, at some point. I was on nights. I wasn't tracking every conversation perfectly. The 3rd visit was a Thursday. I was about to leave for my shift. I was in my work clothes. She knocked at 8:30 p.m. She was holding nothing this time. She said she just wanted to check that I had everything I needed. She asked what time I usually finished my shift in the morning, whether the 6 a.m. train was still the most reliable one from the station near the hospital. I did not remember telling her which hospital I worked at. I had never told her which line I took home. I said I was fine and that I needed to leave. She stepped back. She said something about being glad Hannah was in good hands while I worked. She turned and walked back toward her apartment. I stood there for a few seconds. I wanted to let it go. I'm good at letting things go. Night shift workers have to be. But something in the timing of the conversation had been slightly off, and I was still turning it over when I got on the train. 2 days later, I ran into the building manager again. I mentioned casually that Yuki seemed to have come back from Osaka earlier than expected. He looked at me. He said she had not come back. She was still away. The package she'd been expecting, a small delivery, was still sitting in the mailroom. I asked him if someone else might have been looking after her apartment for her. He said no. He had the only spare key. I stood there in the mailroom for a moment, and I did not say anything else. Yuki came home on a Saturday, 10 days after she'd left. I heard her door. I knocked on it. We talked in the corridor for about 15 minutes. She showed me a photograph on her phone. Her sister's garden, autumn leaves. She asked about Hannah. She had brought back a small souvenir, a folded paper crane, which she gave me to pass along. I told her that someone had knocked on my door 3 times while she was away. Someone who identified themselves as her. Someone who knew small details, Hannah's art project, my train line, my shift schedule. Yuki went quiet. I watched her try to find an explanation and fail. Then she said, "The miso. Did they bring miso?" I said yes. She said, "That's my mother's recipe. The sealed kind, with the snap lid. She used to make it that way. I don't make it anymore. I haven't made it in 4 years." She paused. "My mother died 4 years ago." We did not say anything for a while after that. Here's what I want to say about the face. I have been asked about this. What did she look like? Could I describe her? The truth is that every time I try to assemble the face in my memory, it does not hold together the way a real face does. It's there and then it isn't. What I can tell you is this: I am trained to observe. I have observed faces professionally for 2 decades. And when I look back at each of those 3 conversations, I cannot remember her blinking, not once, across any of the 3 visits. I notice this only afterward, in the same way you sometimes notice a sound only when it stops. I don't open my door after dark without asking twice who it is. Hannah and I have a passcode now, something only the 2 of us know. She has never asked me why we have it. I'm not sure whether that is better or worse. The marker I do, forestry patrol in northern Ontario. Roughly the same 40-kilometer route, every Tuesday and Thursday. I have been doing this for 11 years. I know that route the way I know my own hands. There is a turnout at the 14-kilometer marker where I stop to eat and check my field log. I have stopped there probably 600 times. I park, I eat, I write in the log, I leave. Last March I pulled into the turnout, and there was a cairn sitting in the dirt about 2 meters in front of my truck. Stacked stones, knee height, neatly built. No reason for it to be there. No trails nearby, no hikers. The nearest road is 22 kilometers in the other direction. I knocked it over, made a note in the log, and drove on. The following Thursday it was back, same location, same height. Maybe the same stones, I couldn't say for certain. I knocked it over again. 3 more times this happened, over the next 6 weeks. I stopped writing it in the log because I didn't know what category to put it under. Wildlife doesn't stack stones. Kids can't reach that turnout on foot in any reasonable amount of time, and I've never seen another vehicle on that side of the route. The 6th time, it was built on top of something, my folding knife. The one I'd reported missing 4 weeks earlier, which I had last seen inside my locked toolbox in the bed of the truck. I have that knife on my desk right now. That's the part I keep coming back to. I still have it because I didn't know what else to do with it. But here's the thing. I know my knife. It had a nick in the blade from a fence post I caught in 2018. That nick took out maybe 2 millimeters of edge near the tip. Very distinctive. I had complained about it to my supervisor 3 separate times. This knife has no nick. The blade is factory perfect. I do not stop at the 14-kilometer turnout anymore. I eat in the truck and I do not get out. Nine times I should say first, and I know this sounds bad, in context that I thought it was funny. When she told me the rule, I was sitting in her kitchen, which smelled like sarmail and wood smoke, and she was completely serious, and I was nodding and trying not to smile, which is embarrassing to admit now. I was in the village, a small place called Salsia, in a valley east of Brasov, for a magazine assignment, traditional folkways, autumn harvest rituals. The kind of piece that runs with beautiful photographs and a word count nobody reads. I had been there for 4 days. My host was a woman in her 70s named Domna Popa, though she told me to call her Elena. She had a goat. She made extremely strong coffee. She was not superstitious in a theatrical way. She was matter-of-fact about everything, which made the rule feel stranger, not more dismissible. The rule was this: If you hear the church bell ring 9 times in the evening, do not look at the window of the house at the end of the lane. The empty one, she said. Keep your eyes forward or down, walk past. I asked why. She said, it watches from there. When it has been here long enough, it starts to recognize shapes. If you look back, it knows it has yours. I thanked her and said I would keep it in mind. On the third evening, I was crossing the lane just before 8 p.m. The light was already going. I had my camera around my neck. I was thinking about the shot list for the following morning, specifically whether I needed a wider lens for the threshing barn interior. The church bell began to ring. I counted without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. It is an old bell, the kind with a low carrying tone that seems to arrive slightly after you've already registered it. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I looked up. The house at the end of the lane is maybe 80 meters away. Stone walls. 2 small windows facing the lane. Shutters that have not been fully closed in what looks like decades. It is empty. Elena told me it has been empty for at least 30 years. No one knows who owned it. In the left window there was a figure. A woman, standing still. About my height. Wearing what, from that distance, looked like my coat, the dark green one. Technical fabric, with the hood folded down at the back. She had her arms at her sides. As I watched, she raised one hand. Not a wave, more like pointing, or showing me something. The arm came up slowly, like she was indicating a direction or a specific thing, and then it stopped. The hand was level with her shoulder. I walked very fast back to Elena's house. I don't know exactly how long it took. My legs did the work without my being very involved in it. Elena heard the door. She came to the kitchen entrance and looked at my face. She did not say, "I told you." She said, "Did it recognize you?" I asked her what she meant. She said, "When you see yourself in the window, it means it has been studying you. Usually it shows itself to people who have been in the village for several days. It watches first, then it shows you what it has learned." She sat down. She told me that the bell was not always 9 rings. Sometimes it was 7, sometimes 11. The number didn't matter. What mattered was that the watching had reached a stage. I went back through my photographs that night. 4 days of shots. I had 34 hours of material in the field. In 6 photographs, there is a figure in the background I did not notice while I was shooting. Always at the edge of the frame. Always at distance. Always in the same posture. Arms at the sides. Weight even, slightly too, still for someone just walking through. In 2 of the photographs, the figure is in a location I am certain was empty when I pressed the shutter, because I had just turned away from it. I left the following morning. I do not look at those photographs alone. I send them to my editor first now, with no note, and I wait until she has seen them before I open them myself. She has never mentioned the background figure. I have not told her to look for it. 3 months after I came home, I was preparing the final selects for the piece. I was looking at a photograph taken at the bus station in Bucharest. The day I arrived home, I had taken it through the bus window. Just a habit shot, the platform, the crowd, the gray afternoon light. In the far left corner of the frame, at the edge of the platform where it meets the wall, there is a figure in a dark green coat. Arms at the sides. The second stop, I'm not the kind of person who talks about things like this. I want to be upfront about that, because otherwise this isn't going to make sense. I worked a factory line in the industrial zone for 11 years. Night shift. I took the Colectivo home at 2:15 in the morning. Same route, same driver most nights, same 7 or 8 faces in the same seats. The bus goes west on the ring road, passes through the underpass at Kyle 80, turns south, and gets me home in about 25 minutes. I know that route the way you know the inside of your own apartment. On a Wednesday in February, the bus passed under the underpass at Kaya 80 at about 2:30 in the morning. 12 minutes later, we passed under it again. Same direction, same underpass. I looked around. 3 of the passengers were different from when I had gotten on. The window seat across the aisle, a woman with a red bag, she'd been there since the start, was now occupied by a man I didn't recognize. 2 rows back, same thing, different people. The seat directly behind me had been empty when I got on. It was not empty anymore. I know how that sounds. I'm a practical person. I don't have explanations for things and I don't look for them. What I know is what I saw. I kept my eyes forward. I did not turn around. I got off at my stop and I walked home quickly. When I got in, I checked the bus company's app. They have a GPS tracker for the route. I don't know why I did this. I think I wanted something concrete. The log showed the bus at the Kyle 80 underpass at 2:30. One entry, one time, exactly where I expected it. It also showed a stop at 2:42, 2 blocks from the address that had been in the company's system for a former coworker of mine. Ernesto. He worked the same line as me for 6 years before the accident. We attended the service last May. That stop is not on the official route. I take a different line now. It adds 14 minutes to my commute and costs more. I have not explained this to anyone. The notice: I need to be clear that I am not someone who entertains this kind of thing. I maintain IT infrastructure for commercial buildings. That's my work. I deal in systems, logs, hardware lists, protocols. If I find an anomaly, I document it, and I find the source. That's the job. I'm telling you what I found. I'm not telling you what it means because I genuinely don't know. I live on the 17th floor of a high-rise in Incheon. I've been there for 2 years. The building has 22 residential floors, a lobby level, a parking sub-level, and a rooftop utility space listed as R in the elevator panel. I mention the building because my contract, the one that brought me to Incheon, is to maintain the server infrastructure for a cluster of buildings in the area, one of which is the building I live in. I have legitimate access to the CCTV and sensor logs. This matters for what I found. The note appeared on a Monday morning. It was under my door, handwritten on plain paper. It said, "Do not use the elevator between 00:30 and 01:15. Something has been using it that has no business being here. No signature, no building management letterhead." I photographed it and went to work. The first thing I checked was the elevator log for the past 2 weeks. Building elevators maintain usage records, floor calls, weight sensor readings, timestamps. I pulled the last 14 days of data. Between 00:30 and 01:15, on 11 separate nights, the elevator had registered activity on floor R, the rooftop utility level. The door to that floor requires a physical key and a code. The elevator should have captured whoever was inside. It is not used after hours. The key is held by the building's maintenance contractor, who works daytime hours only. I called the contractor. He confirmed that no one from his team had accessed R after hours at any point in the last month. Second check, the weight sensor. The elevator floor sensor logs the approximate mass of each occupancy event. On all 11 anomalous R floor calls, the sensor registered between 62 and 71 kilograms. The elevator was, according to the weight sensor, occupied. Third check, the interior CCTV. The camera inside the elevator should have captured whoever was inside. The elevator should have captured whoever was inside. The footage for each of the 11 anomalous windows shows an empty elevator. No one visible. But the weight sensor was active. I thought at this point that either the sensor was malfunctioning or the camera had a blind spot I wasn't aware of. Both are checkable. I pulled the camera's hardware specification and confirmed there is no blind spot in that model at standard mounting height. I ran the sensor diagnostics. It passed. Then I looked at the metadata on the CCTV files themselves. The footage for those 11 anomalous windows had been exported from a secondary source. There were 2 recordings of those periods, one in the building's archive, and one that had been written over it from a device with a MAC address I did not recognize. The replacement footage, the empty elevator footage, had been recorded separately and substituted into the archive. The original footage for those windows was gone. Whatever was using the elevator had also replaced its own recording. I wrote this up as a network security incident. I reported it to the building management company. They thanked me for the documentation. The following morning there was a second note under my door. Same handwriting. It said, "Thank you for checking. Now it knows you were looking." I have taken the stairs since then. I tell myself, this is just a habit, or that it's good for my health. I'm aware that those explanations are not quite the same as believing them. The answering machine. Okay, so I know this sounds like exactly the kind of thing someone makes up. I also know that the detail that would make it sound real, the actual recording, I can't share, because I deleted it. Which I know how that looks. I deleted it because after I listened to it the second time, I did not want it in the house anymore, and that was the only thing I could think to do. I was house sitting for my aunt in Portland for 2 weeks in January. She was visiting my grandparents. It's a normal house. A nice house. She's been there for years. I've stayed there before. I know the layout. I was looking for extra blankets on the second night because the heating in the blue room was running low, and I checked the closet. the one with the board games stacked on the top shelf, and I found blankets there, exactly where I'd been told to look. While I was in there, I noticed the other closet, the one in the hallway, just a regular door. I opened it because I was curious, and also because I'd been awake since 5 a.m. and my judgment was not great. Inside was an old answering machine, the kind with the tape cassette inside, a little LCD display, a play button. The display said, "One message." I pressed play. It was my aunt's voice. The recording quality was old. She said the date 3 years and 2 months before that night, and then she said my name. She said, "Priya, honey, you're going to be in the blue room. Don't leave the window cracked because the heat doesn't reach that end of the house, right? The spare blankets are in the closet behind the board games. And don't go looking at things in the other closet. That one isn't for you. The blue room, the board games, the blankets." She said all of it. I called my aunt. She was at my grandparents' house, 900 miles away. She picked up after 2 rings. She said she had not owned an answering machine since 2009. She said she did not record that message. She said she did not know who had. I went back to the hallway. I was going to put the machine back in the closet. The display said 2 messages. I had not pressed anything. I don't want to know what was on it. I had not gone near it since I'd listened to the first one. I unplugged it. I put it in a garbage bag. I put the garbage bag in the outside bin. I slept with the lights on. I haven't told my aunt about the second message. I don't know what was on it. I don't want to know what was on it. The second name. This is a difficult account to write because everything in it is documented, and I am not someone who works in a field that tolerates ambiguity. I am a municipal records clerk. I have been one for 23 years. I process death registrations, civil records, population filings. I understand exactly what a database error looks like, and I am telling you that this is not what this was. The death registration system we use has a field called witness. Vestad was registered in our municipality. No H, it is usually blank, or it contains the name of an attending physician, or a family member who was present. Under Norwegian law, for unwitnessed deaths, it is left empty. Approximately 3 years ago, I began noticing that a second name was appearing in the witness field on certain entries. The name was H. Vestad. It appeared in no way that indicated who had entered it. It was simply there. I searched the National Population Register. No H. Vestad was registered in our municipality. No H.
Vestad was registered in our municipality. No H. Vestad appeared in our staffing records, our contractor lists, or any associated civil database I had access to. The entries where it appeared were varied: natural deaths, some attended, some unattended. 3 of them were for individuals who had died alone in their homes and were discovered days later. For those 3, no witness would have been possible. I flagged it as a database anomaly. The IT department reviewed the field and told me it was a manually entered text field with no audit trail, meaning they could not determine who had typed the name or when.
They marked it unresolved and closed the ticket. Over the following months, I kept a separate log. By the end of the 3rd year, I had 47 entries carrying the name H. Vestad in the witness field. I requested access to the paper archives. Our office maintains parallel physical records going back to the early 20th century. I wanted to verify whether the name appeared in any historical documentation. It did. H. Vestad, in identical handwriting, appears in the paper death records from our office going back as far as I could trace to 1957. Always in the witness field. Always the same small, precise script with a particular way of forming the capital V. I showed these records to our head archivist. He has worked in this office for 40 years. He looked at the handwriting for a long time before he said anything. He said the handwriting belonged to Halvard Vestad. He recognized it because Halvard Vestad had been the municipal registrar for our district from 1951 until his death. In November 1962, I pulled the death registration entry for Halvard Vestad himself, filed in our system retrospectively when the paper records were digitized. My full name. The witness field on his own death entry contains a name, H. Vestad. I do not have a category for this. I have looked for one for 3 years and I do not have one. 2 weeks ago I was processing the entry for an elderly man who had died alone in his apartment in the east of the city. I completed the record, saved it, and moved to the next file. When I returned to his entry to add a correction to the address field, the witness field was no longer blank. It contained my name, my full name. My full name, spelled correctly, in the same small script with the particular V. I was not at that man's death. I did not enter my name. I have requested a transfer to a different department. I have been told to expect a response within 6 to 8 weeks. I still process death registrations every day. I check the witness field on every entry before I open it now. I do not know why I do this. I think I am checking whether it has happened again. I think I am also checking whether it has happened to me. That last one got me quiet in a way I wasn't ready for. A woman checking her own name in a field where names like that shouldn't be. If a specific detail from tonight stuck, the blinking, the knife, that wasn't your knife, the second message you never heard, put it in the comments. We read everyone. Thursday brings more. Take care of yourselves. Lock up properly.